What if I told you that a bouquet of black roses, delivered without any explanation, is the harbinger of something far darker than you could ever imagine? A symbol of death, yes, but also a sign of an ancient curse that binds souls, and yours might be the next one claimed? Before we dive into the mystery of the black roses, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. These roses are just the beginning. Once you know what they truly represent, you'll never look at flowers the same way again. Ready to face the truth? The wind howled through the desolate streets that night, carrying with it an unsettling chill that seemed to come from nowhere. In the quiet town of Saint-Étienne, nothing out of the ordinary had ever occurred. That is, until the day the black rose bouquet arrived at the doorstep of an old house at the end of the lane. No one knew who sent it or why, but its presence was a silent message that everyone would soon regret ignoring. The bouquet, dark and mysterious, was composed of black roses, flowers known for their association with death, sorrow, and forbidden rituals. They weren't just an unusual gift, they were a warning. But from whom? Madeleine, the owner of the house, lived alone since the tragic disappearance of her husband 3 years earlier. She was no stranger to sorrow, but there was something about this bouquet, something unnatural about the roses. They sat perfectly arranged in a glass vase, their deep black petals stark against the green stems, as though they had been placed there with a purpose. What struck her most was the card beneath the roses. It wasn't signed, but it held a chilling message. The past has its reasons, the future its tragedies. A shiver crawled up Madeleine's spine as she held the card in her trembling hands. The words seemed too ominous to be a coincidence, and she felt an unsettling sense of dread flood her body. A legend her mother had once told her resurfaced in her mind, the story of the black roses. They weren't just flowers. They were symbols, messengers from the other side sent by spirits with unfinished business. Some said the roses came to deliver an omen of death. Others believed they were the means by which souls trapped in the afterlife communicated with the living. Whatever the truth, Madeleine was about to learn that this bouquet was no mere coincidence. As the days went by, the roses showed no signs of wilting. In fact, they seemed to grow more vibrant, more alive. The air around Madeleine became thick with an eerie pressure, as though the very atmosphere was suffocating her. Strange noises filled the house at night, like whispers that couldn't be understood, and the roses, they seemed to whisper back. At first, she tried to convince herself that it was just her mind playing tricks, but the dread gnawing at her grew too strong to ignore. It was as if the flowers were calling to her, beckoning her to uncover something long buried. One night, as the wind outside howled violently, Madeleine heard the front door creak open. Rushing to the door, she found it empty, no one there. But on the floor, a second bouquet of black roses appeared, larger and more foreboding than the first. This time, the message on the card was different. They will return, all of them. And you will be there to welcome them. Madeleine froze. The words seemed to pierce her heart, a cold realization setting in. She had heard stories of people who had received the black roses, only to experience strange events shortly after. Some had even vanished. The roses were no ordinary flowers. They were linked to a dark, ancient ritual, a secret cult that had existed in the town for centuries. This cult was said to use the roses as a way to communicate with the dead, more specifically with those who had crossed over in unnatural ways. Her mind began to unravel the truth. Her husband's death was no accident. He had been a part of something far darker, something she hadn't known about until now. The cult she had only heard whispers of was real, and her husband had been its latest victim. But why her? Why was she being targeted now? As days turned into weeks, Madeleine became more and more isolated. The second bouquet did not wilt either, and in fact, the roses seemed to thrive in ways that flowers shouldn't. At night, the house felt colder, the whispers growing louder. The air felt thick with dread. It wasn't just the roses. It was the entire house. It was as if someone was watching her from the shadows. Her dreams became nightmares, and in every dream, she saw the same thing, the black roses, blooming in dark corners, growing larger and more menacing with every passing night. She couldn't take it anymore. The roses had to be the key, the connection to everything that was happening. She decided to visit the town's library. desperate to find any information about the cult, about the roses, and about the death of her husband. She scoured old books and dusty records, piecing together the truth bit by bit. What she found sent a chill through her very bones. The cult, known as the Order of the Black Bloom, was an ancient group that had been performing forbidden rituals for centuries. The black roses were part of their sacrificial rites, used to bring back the souls of those who had died in a way that bound them to the land of the living. It was said that every 13th of the month, the cult would perform a dark ritual, sending the roses to those who had unknowingly been marked. These roses were meant to call the dead back only. The dead didn't always come back in the way one would expect. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. Her husband hadn't just died, he had been a part of something far darker. The roses, the whispers, everything was connected. But what terrified her the most was the final piece of the puzzle. Once someone received the roses, they became tied to the ritual. There was no escape. Madeline's once quiet life had been swallowed by darkness. The roses were no longer a mere warning, they were a binding force. Each petal, each thorn, each stem was an anchor tying her to a fate she could not avoid. And as the 13th of the month approached, she knew there was no turning back. The night before the next 13th, Madeline stood before the bouquet, her heart racing. The whispers were deafening now, and as she stared into the black petals, she realized that the time had come. She could feel the presence of those who had crossed over, their souls restless, waiting to claim her as their own. The roses were their messengers, and they were calling her to join them. And then, as she turned to leave the room, something impossible happened. The roses began to move. Slowly their stems twisted, and the petals opened wider, revealing something inside, something that hadn't been there before. Eyes that glowed with a dark, unnatural light. The roses weren't just flowers. They were gateways, and she was about to walk through one. So what do you think? Have you ever received a gift that seemed too strange to be a coincidence? Or perhaps you've experienced something darker in your life. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, if you're not careful, the next bouquet of black roses could be coming your way. Subscribe, stay alert, and join us for the next mystery, because the dead are always watching.